This is Mark Livesey, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Someone tell me where the Humane Society of the United States has ever bought 1 acre of habitat, where they have ever funded one project that got rid of invasive weed species, where they've ever funded one project that got rid of the Asian carp in the Illinois River. I mean,
none of it.
Pick whatever it is. They've got net assets in the hundreds of millions, and they've never done anything.
I did this whole series of posts of the hierarchy of dead animals on Instagram, on social media. So I had like a picture of chicken. No one cares. Like dead, chicken meat. A picture of chicken. A picture of fish, like cut up fish. No one cares. A picture of an actual fish. Still, no one seems to give a picture of a dead turkey. No one seemed to care. It seemed like But then I showed bear meat. And I showed some bear meat that was just in a bag. What about that? And I'm like, now we're getting weird, right? Well, it's just meat, but it says bear on it. This is bear meat.
Yeah. We care about wildlife. We care about landscapes. We care about all the things that are necessary for conservation. We'll tax ourselves 11%.
But if I showed an actual bear, like we posted some pictures of he's taking me bear hunting, actual bears that I've killed. Gee, I've never had anything in my life where people get mad at me more.
How can I effectively play a part in furthering the future of hunting? We've evolved as time has gone on. We're still very habitat focused. We surpassed 10,000 conservation projects in our history, 7 million acres. We've done over 1 million acres of newer improved access for hunters.
Kentucky is our biggest success story for relocation of elk because it's now the number 9 elk state in the country.
No way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, they don't like you to say this, but it's not like reintroducing other species, which I won't mention.
If people don't have a quality place to access hunting, that's going to be one of the things that leads to the demise of hunting.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. I'm here with David Allen and Steve Decker from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And we're in, oh, dude, who is that?
I'm the new president of his fan club. I'll tell you later.
We have to share that photo on the video.
Oh, yeah.
That's priceless.
Yeah. So we're in Indianapolis at the ATA show and in the Mountain Ops booth. And basically, we got the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the foundation, a little bit about some of the things you guys have accomplished this year, and some initiatives that and plans you have, where you'd like to see it go in the future.
Sure.
So with that said, tell us just a little bit about yourselves.
Ourselves personally?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How long is this show?
Keep it short.
Well, mine's real simple. I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and hunting was a religion in my family, and that's all we did. And I'm still hooked. Today I've been hunting over 52 years, so wow. That's just kind of for me.
I thought you were only 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish. Don't I wish? Yeah.
They hunted early when he was young.
Yeah.
There were no regulations.
Yeah, there were no tags required, right? Yeah.
And Steve?
I grew up in northwest Montana in a little town called Libby. I went to work for the Elk Foundation shortly after college. Spent some time in Canada and South Dakota, back to Missoula, where our headquarters is, and I've actually just surpassed 20 years with the Elk Foundation in December.
Awesome.
Now, Steve's pretty modest, but I know Steve really well, and I will tell you something that Steve will not tell you about himself. Tell him the history of your dad's involvement.
My dad's actually one of the founders. May of 1984, the Elk Foundation started up in that little town in northwest Montana, and he's been involved all along. So, yeah, I do have a little connection there.
I heard a great podcast with Randy Newberg where he talked about, he had, the guys on and talking about how the whole foundation came to be and how they were getting prints done and mailing letters and it just sounded like, what a phenomenal story.
And that was Bob Munson and my father, and they do have. The stories are incredible. You talk about naivety and just not knowing. It was truly a lot of things had to come together for us to get to where we are now. But that first 4 years was literally by the seat of the pants. We were talking last night at dinner, telling a story after the second convention. They didn't know that there were safes at a hotel.
Yeah.
Where they had collected cash through the auctions and the raffles and everything. I think they had like $42,000. And my dad had always seen in the movies where guys jump into a bed full of money. So he'd laid all this money out on the bed in the hotel room, and he dove into it, and he took a picture of it laying on it. Well, then they just stuffed it in bags underneath the bed.
Under the bed like nobody would find it.
The guys who come and clean the room.
Yeah.
What a tip.
Well, they flew home. They divvied the 40-some thousand up between three of them in different bags and got on the airplane and flew home with these bags of cash, which today would end up in federal pen, something.
You are a drug dealer.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. But their story will go down, I believe, as one of the true conservation legacies of this country. When these two guys start an organization. Ducks Unlimited was like the conservation group of the time when they did this,
right?
And they wanted something for elk and big game, yeah.
And
so that's how they started it. They had no business. Yeah,
elk are such an iconic species, and Ducks Unlimited had accomplished so much for waterfowl and waterfowl habitat. They just asked themselves, really, nobody's doing this kind of thing for elk, and they're such an important piece of the fabric of North America. And obviously, if you archery hunting elk is kind of the pinnacle.
It really
doesn't get any better.
It's hard to beat.
It is. And, we've evolved as time has gone on. We're still very habitat focused. And you alluded to a little bit in 2016, we surpassed 10,000 conservation projects in our history, which is a big number. I mean, it's 10,000 projects.
Dang.
7 million acres enhanced or protected. And then in that, we've done over 1 million acres of new or improved access for hunters. And that's one we're very, very proud of. And David will tell you that's a big initiative for us.
Public access.
If people don't have a quality place to access hunting, that's going to be one of the things that leads to the demise of hunting. So we work every day to create new opportunities for people, not only to – it's one thing to have access.
Yeah.
It's another thing to have access to where there are quality opportunities for success.
A good experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really it's 16. We also posted – our 8th consecutive year of all-time high membership. We were just over 222,000 now. It's a 38% growth since he came on board. So
wow.
I'm despite the fact that
and it's evaluation time. So.
I've got my Bugle magazine. I'm a member, and I'm going through it, and I noticed. I always find it fascinating to go through and see. Elk were extirpated from most of the United States, and except for on the west. Yep. And to see these elk herds restored on the east side of the U.S.
Isn't that cool?
It's super cool because people on the East Coast, if they don't have those animals there, it's just out of sight, out of mind. You don't, it's hard to appreciate them as much. And then when they're in your backyard and they belong there.
Yeah. They were native there, right? Yeah, they were a plains animal from the beginning. And, man's expansion pushed them west and pushed them up. And so
you have some numbers in there and some stats, and I believe some of those elk were not they weren't there not too long ago. Like in my grandpa's time, there were elk in some of those states.
That's right.
And they shot the last remaining ones were wiped out just in not too long ago.
Right.
And now you guys have put elk in there. Share one of your favorite stories about restoration in the eastern half of the U.S.
Well, I think one of the things that's cool is Kentucky is our biggest success story for relocation of elk because it's now the number 9 elk state in the country.
No way.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. They don't like you to say this, but they have over 15,000 head of elk in Kentucky now.
Dang.
And it's a win-win for conservation because they were turned out on reclaimed coal mine property. So for everybody who says you can't dig a hole in the ground and take the minerals out and then reclaim it, you can. Not only can you can make it better. But beyond that, those elk that went to Kentucky came from Utah. And 2 years ago, we did a relocation to Missouri from some elk that were in Kentucky.
Wow.
One of the calves that went to Utah is now one of the cows that's in Missouri.
Yeah.
And they know that because of the ear tags and everything. So it's so cool to see the bloodline going here, there, and
thriving.
It's just a neat thing. It really is. And it's cool.
What has the response been Because now people in Kentucky can draw a tag
Yes.
and hunt elk.
It's a substantial revenue piece for them now.
In the
Not
state?
only the hunting, because there's several thousand apply for a very limited number of tag, and there's some big bulls. But there's like the ecotourism. People are going up there where the elk are at in September and October to hear them bugle and whatnot, and it's a big boom for that area.
That's actually, they were relocated in the lowest income congressional district in the United States.
That's right.
So outside of Hazard, Kentucky, they're, post coal mining, it's a depressed economy.
right,
And this is an opportunity for them to seek a new form of bringing people in and driving that economy.
I have elk, and I live in Evergreen, Colorado. And
you got a lot of elk.
literally, they're in my yard daily.
Yeah.
And not literally, they're 3 feet from my front door eating our Halloween pumpkins.
Yeah, they're hard on landscape.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's just a...
Not everybody loves it. We hear from people, and
that's because their priorities are messed up.
Exactly.
well, and it's an interesting thing when we do some of these reintroductions. There is some opposition, and we understand it. It comes from the farm bureaus, and because elk are hard on private landowners. They are. They knock down fences. They eat a lot of groceries.
Yes.
They eat a lot of alfalfa. They eat a lot of corn. So it's not all roses. Yeah.
Well, but part of what we have to do is work with people to mitigate that, to mitigate the issues where they can sustain an elk herd and it's not having negative economic impacts, where in getting everybody to the table, if everybody puts their guns and knives down and you actually sit down and have a productive conversation, there's a lot of middle ground there, and we could use that on a lot of issues.
It's not like reintroducing other species, which I won't mention, and you go to federal court to force it to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
That is good. So on the East Coast, tell us more about, I was surprised from, as I'm going through it, how many herds you now have throughout the East.
You're looking at Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina has elk, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, you just mentioned. This summer we got a photo, it went viral. An elk showed up in Georgia. All those states are pretty well, when you live in the West and the size of our states, those states are more the size of our counties.
Wisconsin and Minnesota have elk
so
now.
It's not uncommon.
We have, it's no big secret, New York is, some people in upstate New York are
looking at feasibility.
Starting talking about.
That's awesome.
And again, we don't literally reintroduce because we don't have the authority to go into a state. It has to go through their state agency. We require that they have an agreed upon elk management plan and that everybody's bought in, their legislature and their state agency, everybody has to be bought into it. We can't just show up with a load of elk and say, hey, we're turning them out.
But that said, I mean, you're not just like rolling in and dumping elk. We want them here. Yeah. That's not happening. But at the same time, this does not happen without the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
Right. Our members, our volunteers, and it's so exciting for them in these eastern states because, elk is mostly a western animal. So when they get a chance to have a project in their backyard that actually means they can go touch and see elk, it really energizes them. They go out and raise tons of money. I mean, what was it? The West Virginia and the Virginia ones, I think it was over $300,000 per state that our people raised because you have to build a holding pen. You have to have them in quarantine. I mean, there's a lot of stages to bringing elk and then turning them out, and that all costs money.
Yeah.
And our people will go to bat and raise every dime of it to do it. It's really cool to watch.
Having grown up in the West, I take for granted that elk are just everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Really. I like Oregon has a huge herd. I grew up in Oregon City, just a suburb of Portland on the south there, and we would head out to all these eastern places, but sometimes hunt the coast on the weekend. Elk are just part of my life. Always have been. Always done it. Been eating elk a long time. And then I watch like Steven Ranella Meat Eater episode, and he's hunting elk in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Right? Great episode, and he's going through the history, and I encourage anyone to go out and watch that as well because it kind of lays down their restoration. I think it's like I take for granted until I hear someone from the East or Midwest who didn't grow up with elk talk about elk. and it's like he's like, this is cool. This is a really neat thing.
I actually have a funny story about that. So I was the regional director in Montana, Dillon, Montana, kind of elk central. There's probably as many elk in that part of the state as anywhere. And we'd always talked a lot about the projects that we do in Montana. These are Dillon folks that are attending our banquet. And one year I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to play the Tennessee elk reintroduction video. And I started that video with 285 Dillon, Montana people in the room, and it went dead quiet. They watched the whole thing, and it's the only time I've had a standing ovation for a video. And this is halfway across the country in Tennessee, and they're living in Dillon. All those people live with elk every day. But I think it made them feel a part of something bigger. Like restoring an iconic species like that to that state is almost like we live with them. Here's our gift to you. But they took a lot of pride in that. It was just really cool to see that.
I've had 3 different experiences just in the last day and a half here at the show where, you know, when we come to these shows and talk with individuals, they always want to tell us their hunting stories. So we get to hear a lot of hunting stories, which is cool. But 3 different individuals, and this is the first time it's happened to me, but it's a testament to what you guys are doing, said this was the first time. And mind you, we're sitting in Indiana right now, so when somebody is coming to these shows, they're coming from all over the United States, but they said, I got to go on my first elk hunt this year. So I'm like, all right, so did you go to Idaho, Utah, Nevada? Where'd you go? Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I'm like, you drew one of the 7 tags in Pennsylvania? I've met 3 people at this show that told me they went on their first elk hunt, and all 3 times I was shocked because every single one of those states were east of Colorado.
That's awesome.
And so to me, I was like, it was kind of a little bit mind-blowing to me because of, I am a little naive because I sit in Utah that is covered in elk. But what you guys are doing is awesome because it's giving everyone out here an opportunity that they didn't have before unless they wanted to come west. So let's tell all these eastern guys, look, stay east, put your tags in the east. And leave our opportunity.
Send your money west. And then
that's right. Keep your butts over there.
Yeah, we'll send some elk east. That's a fair trade.
One thing that I really enjoy Randy Newberg's podcast.
Yes.
And he does a great job working with you guys.
Yes, he does.
And just conservation in general. And it's been a huge help for me just to consume his show. I enjoy it. I think I enjoyed Randy. He's so passionate about conservation. And he's talked about you guys many times. I like BHA. I love what they're doing with public lands and try to get involved with that. But conservation is not always the most popular topic.
No.
And I don't quite get it because
it's not real sexy.
Yeah, it's not how 10 ways to kill a monster whitetail buck. But, but it's still, to me, it's like
it's the foundation.
It's the meat and potatoes of what this is all about.
Yep.
Well, we're trying to come up with ways where we can package it in a way that it is engaging and entertaining. Yeah. So this last year we started a campaign on social media called Hunting is Conservation. It's amazing to me how few people in our community understand what hunters, we don't have conservation.
That was awesome, by the way.
24 million people reached in 1 year.
I take quotes from that and put them at the end of the podcast.
And that's what it's meant for.
You bet.
Exactly.
We talk about 300 million pounds of meat harvested from deer, and much of that information. I got some from Oregon Fish and Game. I remember I took my daughter in. I'm like, okay, we're going to get you your hunting license and all that, and you got to take the class. We're in Hunter's Ed, and they give her all this stuff, and it's like all these factual figures on what hunters do.
Right.
And I'm like, none of this is public. Like, what? How come only my daughter sees this?
Yeah.
Like, Oregon Fish and Game. How come this is not like plastered all over your media and really pushed out?
In all honesty, if you want to see that information, go to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation social media pages, their Instagram, their Facebook, and just scroll through previous posts, and you can see some of the statistics.
It's phenomenal.
And it'll probably blow your mind how much hunting generates as far as just from like a tax basis, the amount that we're taxed for conservation.
And you have cited like where you get this information, how it comes.
Oh, yeah. And a really fun hobby is to get a whole bunch of that together and then go talk to anti-hunters.
Right.
Because when you talk facts, it befuddles them. They can't.
Right.
Well, you don't want to get confused on the facts.
And that's the whole thing. To me, when you're addressing like a non-hunter, anti-hunter individual, most of the time, that's an emotional decision.
It is.
I don't feel like logic is really on their side.
It's not.
And so it's very easy to actually, overcome those arguments with logic because it's emotion against logic. And so I shot a wolf this year with my bow while I was elk hunting.
Yeah.
Which was good because
Absolutely.
and we're calling in this bull and he's coming down the hill and the wolves are coming in toward the and they just didn't see me and I shot this wolf. So I get this wolf and I post it on Instagram and I share it, but I posted like all these facts, which I got, thank you, from your campaign, and was able to also do some research on wolves in general and their status in Idaho and conservation efforts around elk and wolves, and because elk are a primary prey source for wolves, more than probably any other animal in the United States. And so as I watched this, as I shared it, logic was on my side, and you guys provide that content that really helps me have an informed discussion with someone who is really not informed. And I find that a lot of hunters are wanting this information.
Without question.
Yes.
They just don't know where to get it.
Yeah.
Listen, we started with the North American model of wildlife conservation. And it's just saying that is like putting chloroform in somebody's face. So it's not it's really, really, it's the best model of conservation in the history of mankind. Big statement, but it's true.
It's true.
So our goal with hunting as conservation was to package that in a way where it didn't seem like it was dipped in chloroform. And we're going to keep moving forward with consumable pieces of information that are usable for people to articulate clearly how important hunting is in this country. Not only for sustaining people with food, but the money that goes into local economies, the money that funds wildlife research and wildlife management, the law enforcement component of it. That is the model that makes America, the wildlife resource we have here, so valuable. You look at Pittman Robinson and what funds have been generated through the excise tax that was self-imposed by hunters on firearms and ammunition. It's generated billions of dollars to create better places.
Well, and the people most engaged in what I call real conservation are hunters.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. And that is one of the hardest things for antis, I think, to come to grips with is they just can't connect that dot, or they don't want to, whichever it is.
At the end of my podcast, I'm like, I'm talking about conservation and how much hunters care, and yet we try so desperately to kill an animal.
We kill an animal, right.
And it's like, this is. It seems contradictory.
They can't make that right.
To try to kill it, but also care about it.
But it's just the reality of, if you look like at a rancher has a herd of cattle, and he culls that herd every fall, mainly because he can't keep feeding all of those, and that's how he lives.
Yep.
And he ships X amount of them off to market. Well, you have to look at your deer herd and your elk herds and everything the same way, and you've got to cull so much of that off and take it to market, if you will, and that's what hunters do, and we consume them.
Yeah.
Or we better. That's what we should be in it for.
No, I agree. I think right now, too, with the focus that there's like different tides throughout the country, right? Like one of them to me is this idea of where does my food come from?
Yeah.
Right.
And can I get it on my own? And all these people who being in Portland as much as I used to work downtown, there's all these individuals who I meet at the gym who've never hunted before.
Right.
They're like, man, I wish I could get some elk meat, and I wish it. And so they're like going out and buying bows and guns, and they're going out for the first time, and it's neat to see that. I think there's an opportunity there.
Without
at
question.
the same time, the anti-hunting community is probably growing at this. So it's really important. Randy Newberg does a great job of explaining that. I think it was actually Shane Mahoney.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I love everything he does. And Shane was talking about how loss of access, and you talked about how you guys have increased access. Loss of access is the number one cause of hunters losing hunter recruitment.
Yep, it is.
So if we keep losing the ability to hunt lands, so goes hunting. And then so does conservation, because hunters are the primary drivers for conservation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so maintaining access, that's why I push BHA so hard, is really important to me. But restoring elk herds on the east side it's in that same mold, right?
Yeah.
Like you put elk herds down there, and now there's all these individuals who didn't think about hunting elk before.
Yeah, we think of terms of access on many different levels. Having a place, a physical place to go, is one part of access. Another part of access is there are now people hunting elk in Kentucky that don't have to go to Colorado to do it. So access to elk hunting is now easier.
Right.
There's 7 or 8 states in the East that are increasing access. I look at regulations on Montana, and I'm not throwing Montana under the bus, but unless you've hunted Montana your whole life, you just jump on and start reading our regulations. It's confusing.
know.
In fact, Steve Ranella told the story. He had a bunch of agency directors together. It actually was at our headquarters.
place. Yeah, it was great.
And he said, go out on the street and grab somebody, sit them down at a computer, and ask them to purchase a turkey tag in Idaho and feel confident that they are legal in what they're doing when they leave that room. And they couldn't do it. I mean, you need a kind of an advanced degree to get through some of those regulations. So
not
access is a lot of different levels.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself, in a pickle time or two where I'm like, I thought I knew the rules and I screwed up, and it's really on us, right? There's not a lot of mercy sometimes. So making that as understandable, as easy to consume as possible is critical.
Well, and we build all kinds of barriers. And David had made mention of this a few years ago. When you look at the anti-hunting community, they are organized and they have one purpose. Yeah. On the other side, we're talking about, well, you hunt with a bow and you hunt with a rifle. I don't like you. You don't like me. We as a community, listen, if you hunt and you follow the laws in your state and you hunt morally and ethically, you're on our team. Absolutely. And if we bind together that, we will win in the long run. But as long as we keep fighting amongst ourselves, it's hurting our cause.
Yeah, we're our own worst enemy. Hunters are a lot of times. Because like Steve said, it's, you use a crossbow, you're a lowlife. And, you hunt on private land.
Stick
and you're
bow, rifle,
yeah, I mean, so what?
Yeah.
You're hunting.
Get over yourself and get over it. We got to stay together, and we got to look at the real issues. I don't care what you hunt with or where you. If you're legal, and ethical, I don't care. Yeah. And stop this. You don't see defenders of wildlife and wild earth guardians on the internet calling each other idiots and arguing with each other. They don't do it.
Right.
So, but we do, and meanwhile, while we're sitting here peeing on each other. They're picking our pocket of our rights and everything else. Yeah, and
that's
we got to wake up.
Say it that way.
So eloquent.
That part will be
so eloquent, David.
Yeah.
No, for real.
He beats around the bush a lot. He doesn't like to get to the point.
So, Randy has that analogy where he says hunters also, when they get engaged, sometimes our engagement consists of getting on Facebook and bitching about it.
Yep.
Right? That's our engagement.
A lot, especially this time of year, like in the winter. You can tell when there's no hunting seasons open.
And everybody's on their phone.
Yeah. And he said, unfortunately, a lot of these people that are fighting against hunters, the future of hunting, fighting against hunting, most of them are in a soccer game, and they're playing soccer.
Right.
And then we come along and try to play football in a soccer game, and we're losing.
Yep.
It's like if it's a soccer game, you got to play soccer. Right. So you got to get involved at the level that makes a difference. And so one of those, being involved with our conservation groups like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, you got Ducks Unlimited.
Yep, you bet.
Northwest Turkey.
Pheasants Forever.
Pheasants
Forever, Mule Deer. There's lots of them. You bet.
All of these organizations, they are places where we as hunters can become unified.
Correct.
So that's really part of playing soccer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? Not football.
Well, and look, they're using issues. So we talked a little bit earlier how we started as an organization. In the 80s, in the early 90s, habitat was everything. Without habitat, we were losing it.
Yes.
So we were formed and started down a path that was very habitat focused. In fact,
to keep the animals.
Yeah, they needed a place. Once you lose habitat, you don't get it back.
Yeah.
So that was very much a focus. In the last several years, we've noticed, we've become aware of the changing of the game. Again, this issues-based activity. So issues and advocacy for us is a bigger deal. You have conversations out there right now about the transfer of public lands. You have delisting of the grizzly bear just delayed delayed into next year.
Yep.
If we're not relevant, they're using the courts and the legal system to win their outcomes. I'm speaking of the other side.
Absolutely.
And we as a community need to get better and more focused and organized. Randy and David actually did a thing earlier this year. Essentially, it was a little bit of a barnstorm tour. Went to, the night before some of our banquets and brought some of our volunteers together. And essentially, it was called Real Conservation Matters. And a part of that was helping educate our community how to contact your legislator on an issue, how to be effective and engage and play the game on the same level that they're playing it. Some of that content does exist on our website. Next month, we're going to launch kind of a cool thing that will help get that content out there further. But there's just taking 10 minutes and figuring out how can I effectively play a part in furthering the future of hunting, this culture and this heritage that we also passionately care about. We're going to help bring some of those things together. And I think they started it last year.
Right.
We're going to keep that going.
Well,
and that's playing soccer.
Even more to the point, this whole public lands transfer debate, again, hunters, I believe the majority of the hunters are on the side of keep public lands public. But there are a number of us that are like, oh, the federal government shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. They're just anti-government. Hey, I get that.
Yeah.
We have issues every day with the federal government. That doesn't fix the problem.
Right.
The problem is the management mentality and the management strategies that we're managing these public lands with. There's some public lands that are in terrible shape.
Yeah.
And we want to go in and do selective timber harvesting and whatnot. Well, the antis immediately go, clear cut. Well,
right.
We don't fight back, right? We sit there and argue with each other over, well, the state should have it, no, the Fed should have it. And again, we're distracted by what really isn't the issue, and the real issue is over here, and we're losing the real issue.
Right.
We got to forget that stuff. Keep the lands public, but let's make the federal managers
do their job.
Do their job and do it right.
That's been one of the things I've talked about. As I've explained the issue as I see it, as I understand it, there's a lot of pushback from anti-big government, Republican-type leaning conservative individuals that are like, hey, my state could manage it better than the feds. But the math doesn't work,
no,
and the reality doesn't work, and the track record doesn't indicate that's true at all. In fact, it's a scary track record across all the states. So when you start to talk about it, it's not a 2-minute soundbite. It's an
involved conversation.
It's an involved conversation.
Yep.
The other part is back to the soccer and the football analogy is, to just go make it the states handle it. It's this attitude that's going to magically fix the problems with government
that's
that
my
we have.
point. It isn't.
And the reality is, it's not. You're still trying to play football.
Yeah, and they're playing soccer.
If the state owns it, these groups are still going to file lawsuits. They're going to appeal any kind of management activity.
Oregon's Elliott State Forest is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right in our backyard in Oregon, where
getting ready to give it away.
They're just trying to auction it for pennies on the dollar because it's bleeding them dry.
They can't manage it,
and they can't seem to get to log it because it's tied up in litigation.
Yeah.
Well, the idea that you can just hand Oregon this new piece of property and all of a sudden Oregon's going to handle that.
Yeah. Right.
They're proving every day they can't.
Well, here's but here's even a different perspective on that. You take the states of California, Oregon, and Washington. If tomorrow they woke up and their federal lands were all suddenly state lands, how long do you think hunting would last?
Oh,
it would be voted out in a referendum within 5 years.
Yeah.
Because they would control all the land except private, and it would be over.
Yes, absolutely.
And hunters who are saying, take it from the feds and give it to this, they're not thinking. They're, like you said, it's just the anti-government rhetoric. And, hey, I get that. I have a lot of anti-government thoughts myself sometimes.
You do live in Billings.
Even the whole last election cycle was like, oh, my
like a circus?
word.
Yeah.
But you got to get your thinking hat on here and think clearly about what's really going to fix this.
Well, when Theodore Roosevelt did all the work he did and Aldo and all these conservationists that have been involved for so long, they've established this, and there's all these things in place, these safety mechanisms and these rules around federal management of the land that doesn't exist at the state level. And to me, it's like back to soccer and football. Soccer is participating in the system we have. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that, I mean, to me, it's like most of it's because hunters don't get involved.
Right. No,
they're
don't.
apathetic,
That's
and so
right.
they're not engaged. So they're like, well, if we just give it to the state, that they're still not going to be involved.
Yeah.
It doesn't address the root of the
You
problem.
want to find some people involved. Look at the antis and the environmentalists. Holy cow. They show up. They're involved. They have a plan. They go to public meetings.
But, David, you know what I think is...
And they're winning and we're losing.
But I think part of that, the reason that that's the case, isn't necessarily because they believe more strongly in their views than we do.
No, you're right.
It's because they get paid.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
you
and
start
money's
talking
a
about
big deal.
equal access to justice. and how
Well,
that's
you're talking
manipulated.
about like the Humane HSUS has over
Employing-
$100 million in the bank in cash, and they're funding a lot of little splinter groups, and,
Right.
and there's other groups that do it. You're right. It's just like the election last time. There was a lot of quote-unquote people getting paid to go do funky
Yeah.
things at rallies and different
Well,
things. It's like,
and-
is that what we've turned into?
Well, I think
You know?
it's the ease of access that we've had.
Yeah.
I've lived
Take
in
for
Montana the
granted.
majority of my life.
Yeah.
For about $82 a year, I can hunt everything, elk, deer, the whole 9 yards,
Yeah.
and that's always been available to me. It's never been challenged. I've never had to fight for that. It's a legacy that was given to me. So more people have to stop for a minute and think about, okay, what legacy am I giving to the next generation?
Right.
Because the one before us did a hell of a good job. So what are we going to
Absolutely.
leave it as?
Well, it's just a masked approach, right? Like that's easy to fall for.
Yeah.
This whole
Well, then-
issue about access and stuff. It's when Randy said it pretty good when he was like, okay, look, if you're in New York or you're in
Right.
in I don't know, Ohio, I own that land in Montana.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
an owner.
As much as we do.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
own it
That's
as much
right.
as you do. And when they transfer it to the state, now I don't own it anymore.
That's right.
That would appall me if I'm in New York, man.
Yeah.
That is my land.
That's
Everything
why
that-
they'll never get it to happen. It'll never go through Congress. They'll
I hope
never,
not.
Oh, it won't. It's just a distraction from really getting something done. But you said something a few minutes ago about the math doesn't work.
Yeah.
The business model does not work. So let's just follow that out for a minute. Okay, land goes to the state. They have it for a while. It doesn't work financially. Blah, blah, blah.
It catches
so
fire.
what happens?
It costs $5 million to
Whatever.
put it out. Now they used
So what do
all
they-
the budget they had for schools to put the fire out
But-
because it's theirs. It's not the whole nation.
right.
So they don't fit the bill anymore. It's if you own it, you own it, and so all the residents of Montana now have to pay for the cost.
And Montana,
they don't have the money.
Yeah, and we don't have the money. We say we're not going to do it. So what happens? They're going to sell it,
Yeah.
and then it's gone.
Utah was classic. Like, well, if gas stays above, I don't remember what it was, $3 a gallon, we're good.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah, they did that study,
like,
and it
well,
was
yeah.
all based on oil.
if
being
everybody pays me a whole bunch of money,
Right.
I'm good. It's like, yeah, well, no, duh.
Yeah.
But that's not reality.
No, it is not. And you're giving away a legacy, and
Yeah.
it's like, come on, folks.
Yeah.
Go fix some real problems.
That's
and make the managers manage these lands the way they're supposed
Well, and
to be, and
I think-
give them the money, and let's get on with it.
Right. I think that if you as a unified group, I think BHA published that every state that they had a chapter in, where they have a chapter, they stopped all federal to state public land transfers. So they don't have a chapter in every state.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
They don't
right.
have representation.
Right.
But that goes to show how powerful representation is.
Without question.
Participation.
Well, and united, again,
Yes.
when we have the crossbow hunters fighting with the traditional archery
Yeah.
hunters, we've fractioned what we're trying to accomplish. That's why, again, like everybody has to take a deep breath, leave the guns and knives at the door, and go in and let's figure out some united things that, like the future of hunting, the future of public
Yeah.
lands. Those are things we should be able to win together, united.
Tell me, I agree. Tell me what you guys have planned going forward this year. Anything
we have a new digital media platform. I don't know all these.
David built it.
Yeah, right.
I can tell.
I can plug a toaster in. That's about it. So that's how technology oriented
it's
I am.
unique that Casey in what Mountain Ops. I've watched this company in this industry, and they've done such a great job. I see what they do in the new media marketing. We're 32 years old. We produce a great magazine. We have a very traditional membership, and I think our traditional marketing has been really, really good. David and I aren't necessarily the most technical people in the community here, to put it lightly, but at least we're smart enough to know what we don't know. Yeah. So we've gone out and secured some folks that are really good in these digital platforms. I talk to Casey on a very regular basis, and elk, what we represent is such a powerful visual piece. Where elk live and elk themselves in September, presenting that to folks through the magic of social media, through the magic of a platform that we hope to launch in February, we're pretty excited about it. And let's face it, elk hunting is complex. It's one thing to harvest a 120-pound whitetail and get it to the truck. It's a whole other thing when you put down a 600-pound elk. We're hoping to build some of those bridges and provide engaging content from everything from the gear, the hunting itself, all the intricacies that are. I've hunted elk my entire life, and I'm still terrible at it. I'm still learning. I mean, I'll always be learning.
He is pretty bad.
David can confirm that. But we think it's going to be really cool. It's going to connect all of our social medias. It's going to connect our great partners like Mountain Ops and others, where people can come and engage in really, really great content.
So what do you think is I'm looking forward to that, and you'll talk about this in February?
Yes, sir.
So for people that are listening that are not engaged in or involved with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, one thing I want to tell them is you guys aren't just a foundation that has collected funds and kind of sat around. Like, you have got things done, and the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
And I think that it feels good to be part of something where, everyone's concerned about where they put their money.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Especially in an organization that is supposed to work for them for a certain purpose. So I just seen it through my whole life, your involvement in what you guys have been able to accomplish in your organization. And so without hesitation, I mean, anyone that's listening, I really encourage them, if they're not members, to become a member. And with that, how much does it cost for an annual membership?
$35.
$35.
Yep.
And with that, they get Bugle Magazine.
They'll get access to some pieces of this new mobile platform. Obviously, they'll get our newsletters. They get a lot of content from us. There's some things behind a member wall within our website, the RMEF space, where some of our partners provide discounts. There's a myriad of different benefits, privileges, if you will, that those that support us in this community want to pass those kind of savings on to the folks that are supporting us. And I think at the end of the day, you can be a part of something that's making a difference, like you said.
Well, yeah, and I just feel like $35.
Yeah,
that's like a pizza and root beer. Like,
just don't eat any cheeseburgers for a month. You should be able to save $35. And
really.
Well,
I mean, honestly, like, I've gone out and just become members of everything that I believe in, because that's the first step in participating and playing on that soccer field.
Yeah,
right?
And listen, your $35 are putting elk in the East. They're creating new access opportunities. They're featuring this legacy and culture of hunting that we all are so passionate about. It goes so far and does so much. It's really hard to explain in total.
Another part of our business model is, if you're in one of what we call the elk states, where there are elk, you go to our banquets that they have annually each year, and that raises additional funds, et cetera. 50% of those funds stay in that state each year, and the volunteers from those states get to vote on how that money is spent in conservation projects. So
Dude.
it's allowing them to put money in their own backyard, which really turns people on. And we want that. I mean, we encourage that. So even beyond the membership, you can engage with your local chapter. You can become a volunteer if you like. They're always looking for volunteers to help put on the local banquet or go do local projects or whatever. And
that's really the community piece of it. Being,
Yeah.
Going to a banquet and sitting with people of like mind, you create new friends, you get the camaraderie, you get to relive your hunts, and you get to do something great for wildlife. And the other 50% that comes back to headquarters is driving those large landscape projects, those big access projects. So that money isn't just getting gobbled up either. It's going back to those states in the form of bigger, more substantial projects.
We receive no government funding. We are 100% funded by what we raise, which is by our choice mostly.
We do leverage some federal funds like land and water conservation money, but it's a direct pass-through to actual projects.
Yeah, we don't budget to live on those or anything else. Those are grants that we get from time to time, but we raise how we live, and we do that by design because it's kind of scary to depend on the government for your future. So
and you guys announce your banquets in Bugle.
Yep.
And,
and on our website
and
too,
your website.
RMEF.org. Yep.
So anybody can go.
Yes, sir.
Participate, and you guys do all kinds of. It's fun because there's giveaways and auctions for cool stuff, and it's a great time.
Yeah, it's a great experience.
It is. Yep. And it's with 3 to 5, 6, 700 people of your closest friends who have the same thing in common, and they all love wildlife. Most of them are big game hunters.
Well, that's one thing I was going to say when I went to Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous, their annual rendezvous last year. The people that I met there were some of the coolest people I had. And so unlike this trade show, which I love it, but when I go to BHA, it's all conservation-minded people that are deeply involved, not just kind of talking about it, They're putting money down. They're engaging, and it's a neat place to be, and a neat thing to be a part of.
Without question,
it is absolutely.
A lot of times we talk about the funding side of it, and when you look at it, how conservation truly happens through groups like ours, BHA, ourselves.
Yeah,
it's time and money. Some people have more time, which time is as valuable to us as money. So our volunteers that make the world go around, it really is a combination. So, and you watch, when you're younger in life, typically you have a little more time. And then as you get older in life, you have a little more disposable income. And we see both of that. And it's cool. Now that we're almost 33 years old, I'm seeing people that started chapters, their children are now chairing those chapters. And the folks have maybe moved on from the volunteering side, but they give us a little bit more money every year because they're later on in life. Their kids are now giving of the time.
Yeah.
So that combination of things is really what makes it happen.
And people can get involved in other ways as well. Volunteer time.
Yeah, we have hands-on projects.
Resources, tools.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So it's $35. That's just to get started.
Yeah. We have sponsor memberships at $300, a lifetime memberships.
I was going to say, what's the lifetime?
$1,500.
$1,500.
$1,500.
Our COO would like to increase that.
Yeah.
But Dave and I are keeping him honest.
So how many years do you have to live to make that make sense?
Boy.
Listen to this business
if you ask our COO, he says
1 year.
Yeah, he likes to give them to 75 years and up.
And then they got to re-up.
And then I go to banquets and offer them to the youngest person in the room.
He was giving life members to the youngest people in the room, and our CEO was like, David, it's got to be the oldest person.
He said, do you realize how much money we're losing on that by the time they're 75? And I'm like, so what?
That's why we have the marketing guys make it real.
There you go.
Yeah. You can't let the bean counters get in the way of creativity
and progress.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
No, but as a young buck myself, I think before I really got to know you guys and got involved with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, I kind of looked at it as this is what my dad does, or this is what my grandpa does, and one of Mountain Ops' initiatives is to help people see that conservation's cool.
Yeah.
Conservation matters. And it's funny, I went and did a hunt with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation earlier this year, and we were doing a little interview afterwards talking about it, and and it was a pretty emotional hunt as I had hit a bull and looked for it for 3 days and was unable to recover it. So I was already high on emotions, but it was cool because I was able to hunt with my dad and experience this hunt with my dad. And as I started thinking about my 5-year-old son, I got really emotional. I actually started crying during the interview and talking about, I couldn't imagine not being able to have this experience with my son in 20 years.
Yep.
And in my opinion, as being one of these young bucks, this is what you guys do is so important because I don't have the time, I don't have the talent, and I don't have the ability to go and fight that battle. So I need somebody to do it for me. And for $35 a year, abso-freaking-lutely, I can do that.
And when you're part of that unified front, right?
Yeah, you bet.
It's not just that. It's like not just will they fight for you, but they can reach out to the Army. That if you're involved and you're a member and you're part of that Army, they can reach out to you and say, we need you guys to mobilize
show up.
and do this.
You bet.
And most of the time, it's not much. It's just a little letter or it's a little, few minutes of your time.
Yep.
But that Army has now mobilized and achieved something that's huge.
Yeah, that's how this country works.
Yes.
Quite honestly.
And the hunter army, if you will, in this country is extremely powerful when we're together.
I
mean, beyond what we even recognize, because there's anywhere between 14 and 20 million of us.
Yeah.
That's blows away any other demographic group
Especially if we
when
get
we
together.
get on the same page. That's right. And I mean, if we just keep it simple and get focused, we can move mountains literally in this deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd like to see, folks that are listening go out and join up and get involved. Be supportive of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Go out there today. Do it. Go out.
Join any of these groups.
Join it.
I do.
Yeah.
You bet.
Okay, we keep telling them to join. Where can they join?
Go to
RMEF.org. That'll be the simplest.
Or I'll give out
source.
David's cell phone number.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you take credit cards over the phone?
Yeah. No. We have Brandon Bates's numbers.
We have
don't we?
Brandon's cell
Go to
phone
his
number.
house.
There you go. We'll give you his address.
Yeah.
111
Oakley, Utah.
Valley Lane,
Look
Oakley,
for
Utah.
the. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for coming on the
Thanks for
podcast
having
today.
us.
I appreciate it.
Thank
It was
you
a pleasure
for what
meeting
you do for
David.
our industry.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you
so much.
We need
Thanks,
the voice.
Steve.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, it's the least I could do for you guys.
Thanks, Casey.
All right. Stay gritty, guys.
Always gritty.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowman film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. We thank Kifaru, Mountain Ops, Hoyt, Vortex, Phelps Game Calls, Black Eagle Arrows, and Crispy Boots for supporting the Gritty Bowman. We love these companies and the people behind them. They truly make fantastic products. Please support them however you can. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.
You guys want to smile at the camera?
Hi. Yo, let me get my knife out. Oh, no.